Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and I have got to talk to you about book number 2 in the EXITORN Adventures series, Segra and Stargull by Peggy Downing, because this is one of my new favorite series, maybe of all time. I don't know. I don't know. This is ranking up there because I loved every minute of this book. It has such a cozy feel. It has such a classic throwback fantasy vibe that I just could not get enough of. Also, this teal color is just so great. A teal, maybe aqua, I don't know. The coloring on this book is just awesome in my opinion. So, let's talk about Segra and Stargull. So this is book number 2 in the series, and it starts off right where book number 1 left off. We find out, okay, slight spoilers for book number 1. If you have not read book number 1, you can skip ahead a few if you really want to read these. Otherwise, slight spoilers. So, at the end of book number 1, Segra and Brill, they free the king, they get rescued, and Segra finds out that she needs to go find her parents. So she's headed off to find her parents, but discovers that they are missing. Now, Segra's been at the palace for 2 years. She doesn't know what's happened to her parents, and so she goes on a journey with Brill to find her missing parents. And that is probably all I'm going to say about the plot, because this book was so great. It went to so many interesting places. And I just have to say from the start, again, Segra as a character just is one of the best. One of my favorite female characters in a fantasy book. She just steals the show in so many good ways. And not at the expense of Brill. Brill and Segra are just such a good team. And in fact, they talk about that in this book. They talk about how they are such a good team together. And it is definitely Segra's book this time around, whereas the first book was really from Brill's point of view a lot of times. This book is really from Segra's point of view. And it makes sense because she's searching for her missing parents. She's trying to find them. She's going from place to place to discover where they are. And I will just say the danger amps up here to tenfold. The plot twists are out of this world, which I will admit, one was ruined for me because I looked at the back matter of book number 3. So don't do it. If you want to read these, do not look ahead at the back matter of the later books because they will spoil some things. Don't do it. I looked at one thing and I was able to guess something and I felt so disappointed that I could guess it because I saw that one little piece of information. And up to that point, I never would have known. Never would have known. Never ever would have known. It was so much fun. Now, this book in particular, the whole time, I don't know if it was nostalgia vibes, but I just kept thinking about The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Because in this book, we leave the mainland and go sailing out into the islands around EXITORN. And the islands are so much fun to explore. There are so many surprises, and I loved it so much. And in fact, there are some fascinating developments. Things that I would have not thought that an author would have done back in the 80s. This series, I don't really know of other Christian fantasy series like this that built upon previous books, especially books for kids. At this time, this was like the high time of anthology series. There were all anthology series. It was all kind of drop in, the do the thing, get out, next book. It's almost like that other book didn't even happen. Like nothing happened in those books that built upon each other. This series builds upon each other. And not in a way that feels forced or feels out of the blue. It's all just woven together. There is part of me that wonders if Peggy Downing, when she wrote these, wrote them like all together in a row, because it kind of has a little bit of that vibe, but it does not feel like a chopped up giant novel. I will say, each book feels completed by the time it's done and the story is wrapped up. But she weaves in these threads throughout the book that come into play later and that build upon each other for future books. So right now I'm reading book 3, and there are things that happen in this book that are set up that come into play in book 3, and I am loving it so much. It's so fascinating. Once again, Segra is just such a great character. She has so much agency, and again, not at the expense of Brill. Now, one interesting thing that I do have to talk about. The publisher originally of these books was Victor Books, which was a division of Scripture Press, and I don't know exactly how this all works out. Today, from what I can tell, the rights to these books, because they are not reprinted, have not been reprinted except for something I'm about to talk about. The rights for these books are owned by a company called David C. Cook, which is a Christian publisher. And I don't know if the rights have been reverted back to anybody. Peggy Downing, the author of these books, has since passed away a few years ago. So I don't know where the rights are right now, but from what I can tell, David C. Cook has them. And I would be so curious to know if they're ever going to do anything with these rights, because I think these books are just so well done. They are so much fun to read. There is such great adventure and nostalgia. And like I said, this one had me thinking of The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker the entire time with this island hopping that was going on. It was just so great. I loved it. There's also, I will say, so 2 of these books, the first 2, were reprinted by Bob Jones University. Now, I will just say, I'm going to be careful here. Bob Jones University is a highly conservative university, a highly conservative Christian university. And they are not always known for wanting to allow everyone to have a seat at the table, I will just say. And so they renamed this book from Segra and Stargull to The Lost Prince. And I just gotta say, there is a storyline about a lost prince, but that is such a small storyline in this book. And I cannot help but wonder why they would rename it when they published it to The Lost Prince away from Segra and Stargull. I can only pose the question that I'm not even saying out loud, and you can come to conclusions. So I think this definitely is Segra's book. It needs to be called her book because it's her book. And again, not at the expense of Brill. It is a team book where the characters are coming together to work together. They both have things to offer. And it's just such a great adventure story. Like I said, in the tradition of the Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis, the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander, and Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. I just kept thinking about it the entire time. Like, obviously that game was not out when Peggy Downing wrote this book, but this book is so much like that. It was so much fun to read. I highly enjoyed this book. In fact, I give Segra and Stargull 5 stars out of 5. This book is another 5-star read, and if book 3 keeps going the way it is, I think that's going to be a 5-star too. These books might not be for everyone. It might not be for you. I don't know. But if you like kind of that cozy medieval fantasy where there are like fun creatures and interesting places to explore, this is the kind of book for you. I will say, like I said, this is a Christian fantasy book. And again, in this book, it's a tiny bit clunky when the Christian pieces of it come in and they're talking about God. But like I said also, Book 3 fixes that problem. And I really think that was Peggy Downing kind of learning from these first 2 books here and thinking about how to structure it and how to weave it in more organically. Because this one, even more than the first one, had a couple of moments where I thought, that's really random to say right now, but okay, like, all right, here we go. So I will say that, but there's nothing else to say. I loved this book so much. So much. And Stargull is so great. I can't say anything about Stargull because spoilers. And this is a spoiler-free review. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.